Fastamai, Misha Taig, Tame Bagan Ski, Ach Manra, and Tainasak. So Fastamai. So my name obviously is Taig. I'm a teacher, a primary teacher and elementary teacher. I had kindergarten and in a composite class, maybe 4 classes when I started teaching. So I'm not used to standing behind any podium. And if you have trouble kind of following me as I move around, I will stop. I know the cameraman mightn't be too happy with that, but I'll try my best to stay put, but it doesn't come naturally. So look, it's Misha TJ or Taig, agus Hamsha Marvuntor, agus Fime Marvuntor is Skaldan Gailga. In Éireann, agus inis tá méid gobar na múntóirí atá ag tréáil le bheith mar bhúntóirí is scoil an tumadachis. I work in the University of Limerick in Mary Immaculate College. I am an immersion teacher. I came through the immersion, I didn't come through the immersion system. I learned Irish as a learner of Irish in the English medium system. I discovered that I had a capacity and ability to learn Irish successfully, and that inspired me to go on and study at a 3rd level when I was becoming a primary teacher. I qualified as a primary teacher, and by accident I ended up being a head teacher in a Irish medium school outside of the Gaeltacht, not ever having stood in an Irish medium school in the Gaeltacht or outside the Gaeltacht my whole life. So I was, even though I was very successful with every school placement, while I was training to be a primary teacher, and I acquired A's in my assessments, when I came to teach as a head teacher in a composite class, teaching content to a group of maybe multilingual children, a group of children who did not have the language of instruction, and when I had responsibility to teach content through a second language, I was a failure. So this inspired me to go on and see, what do we do about this? It's a different skill set, it's a different knowledge base we have to work from. So what do we do as a group of teachers who are qualified? How do we serve the needs of this bunch of really innovative learners in a very effective way? So that inspired me to go on and do further research. I worked with the professional services for 9 years in a national role as a coordinator for second language acquisition and immersion education nationally. And then the last 7 years, I'm in my current role in Mary Immaculate College, where I work with teacher education, specifically with immersion teacher education. And I coordinate a master's programme geared totally at Irish medium immersion teachers in the Gaeltacht and outside the Gaeltacht at elementary level and at post-primary level, as well as supervising masters and PhD students. So in a nutshell, that's me. So, but you didn't come to hear about me tonight, and I'm really glad and I'm really honoured to be able to share the Irish experience with you. And it was so invigorating and inspiring to be with you all today. From the very morning, the very beginning until now, there hasn't been a minute when there has been an aha moment. The sense of enthusiasm, the sense of innovation, the real strong sense of identity and belief in what you're doing, about your language, your culture, your tradition, your identity, who you are, where you've come from and where you want to go. I think it's really inspiring to have achieved so much over such a short period of time. And the Bunskull is just such a satellite for that successful development. So such an eshimlar, an exemplar of that development. So cogorchas, congratulations. So tonight, and I have to admit, I'm not that fluent. I did get some help with translations, but tonight what I want to share with you is our experience when it comes to research. I am an elementary teacher, but I suppose in later years I have obviously an interest in research, and we have to harvest that evidence base, because I suppose to gather momentum in the field, to articulate the demands and the needs of the sector, we have to have that evidence base to back up what we're saying. We all have assumptions about Irish medium education. We all have expectations about Irish medium education. We all have our own recommendations and suggestions and experiences, but they mean very little if they're not backed up by evidence. So that's why I've really focused on research findings here, because we can really stand over what our decisions are going to be. So there are promises and there are pitfalls when it comes to Irish medium. So the next 40 minutes, I take it, will look somewhat like this. Now, I do have a tendency to go off on tangents. Adrian there is, his eye contact is very strong. He's a very good communicator. And they do say bilingual people have a very keen sense of communicative skills and a very heightened sense of communicative ability. So you don't even have to use languages to get your message across. And Adrian is a pure example of that. So he'll keep me on track, I'm sure. So the next 40 minutes, we'd like to look at the Irish story in particular. First of all, taking stock. Where have we come from? And what is the state of play in Ireland at the moment? Then just taking a break and moving swiftly along to the different models of bilingual education in Ireland. And I suppose I'm specifically talking about the Republic of Ireland here. As many of you may know, we have the Gaeltacht area, communities in which Irish is used as a mother tongue for some people. But the use of that language is in a fragile state in these communities at the moment. And we'll talk very briefly about what the government and what the Department of Education and Skills are hoping to achieve by implementing some plans to promote the use of Irish and culture in and outside of school in these areas. Moving forward, what exactly the department and the government are doing about this and helping us and supporting our journey forward. And do feel free, this is an informal discussion, conversation, celebration of findings and sharing of experiences. So do feel free if you have any aha moments or any concerns or any burning desire to contribute in any way, shape or fashion, please feel free to join in at any stage. The number 4, questions at the end, it doesn't work like that. If you have something to say it. Be glowert. So taking stock, have some of you been to Ireland, or just a show of hands, you've all been, more or less. Yeah, so you know who we are, where we are. We're famous for a lot of things, but I won't go there. We'll move swiftly along because that's not what I'm here to talk about. But just taking stock, again, Irish is recorded as one of the oldest languages, written languages. And it is our national language. It is our first national language, English being the second. And it is spoken widely by a group of people, a community of people, but we do have some challenges and there are some opportunities. And there are so many, even from interacting with some of you today in Manx and in communicating with the children in the Bunskull. It was amazing that I could comprehend and in my own inadequate way respond to some of the interactions. So the similarities between Manx and Irish are astounding, and I think there's a great connection there to discover together how we could move forward together in that sense. So we have some Irish-speaking areas in Ireland, and our Gaeltacht regions. We have Unrine here in County Waterford, Waterford Crystal. County Cork, we have Gaeltacht Vúscrí. In County Kerry, you've all heard of Dingle. We have Corcaghine, Gaeltacht. County Galway, we have Connemara, Gaeltacht. Mayo, we have, I suppose, some Gaeltachty, some pockets where Irish is spoken as a mother tongue. Donegal, Tír Chonaill, and Shin, and County Limí and Shin, we have a Gaeltacht area, Racharn and Shin Cuma. So in these areas, some are stronger Gaeltacht, where Irish is spoken as the community language or the home language for an amount of people. Some Gaeltachty are stronger than others. But we do have these areas, so just to look at the outside the Gaeltacht, there are more Irish speakers now living outside the Gaeltacht than in the Gaeltacht. So that's a message in itself. There's a real rejuvenation, a reawakening of the importance of our language, and not just our language, but our culture, our traditions, our history, our folklore, and who we are. So, and that has definitely the Celtic Tiger and the influx of international people living now in Ireland has really helped us to shake ourselves down and say, look, we have a language of our own, we have a culture also. It is time for us to embrace this. Other nationalities have come, they speak their language, they celebrate their culture. What is wrong with us that we're not doing likewise? And it has really given us that impetus to move forward in a very positive way about the Irish language. So you hear often about the Celtic Tiger, the damage done, but actually that is one of the positives that came from that as well. You can read the statistics there. We're shoving on for, well, some would argue that it's 5 million, in and around 5 million, and the total population within the Gaeltacht areas is 96,000. Again, that's only 2% of the overall population. So the 2016 census, and again, I'm not going to bombard you with figures and statistics, but just to set the context and to paint the picture here, the population of Ireland who say they can speak Irish is almost 40%. But if we unpack what does speak Irish mean, can speak Irish, what exactly does that mean? We can all say, look, can I go to the toilet? Can they speak it? What registers? When do they speak Irish? To whom do they speak Irish? In what context do they speak Irish? Are they fluent speakers? Are they accurate speakers? So really, 40% saying they speak Irish. It's good to know, but it's not really helpful when we dig beneath the surface. So it's good to know what does that 40% mean? The other, I suppose, finding that comes out of the census is 1.7% of the population speak Irish daily outside of the education system. So Irish is a compulsory school subject at elementary level and at post-primary level in all the models of education that we have. And I'll be talking briefly about the models in a minute. But in English medium education, Irish is a compulsory school subject from kindergarten all the way up to our leaving cert. A levels here, I presume. This means that 1.7 of the whole population outside of that cohort of students who have to learn Irish as a subject, and I put emphasis on a subject, speak Irish outside of the education system. So many of those are teachers, many of those are professionals who work in the Irish language trade and culture and industry, and many are Irish language educators. 2% of the population live in the Gaeltacht areas, as I said earlier, but however, out of that 2%, 32% of people residing in Gaeltacht households speak Irish daily outside of the education system. So you can see what kind of a fragile state Irish in the traditionally known Gaeltacht areas is in. 2% of the population lived there. There was traditionally the view that everybody in these Gaeltacht regions spoke Irish as a mother tongue. However, there has been a movement of English speakers who do not have Irish into these regions. There has been a changing of attitudes over the years, and now only 32% of people living in those areas can speak Irish outside of the education system. So this called for some severe measures from our government to take a good look at what's happening, and it has really I suppose, motivated them to put together a suite of initiatives to support and promote the use of Irish through the education system, but also the use of Irish and culture, and find again our identity outside of the education system also, because we can't always blame schools and put the responsibility on schools. So again, the development of the Irish language over the years has been shaped and coloured by various legislative documentation and strategies and the Anglo Language Acts. And again, this timeline just shows, I'm not going to go into detail here, but I do want to draw your attention to these three, because I'm here to talk about research findings, particularly research findings relevant to the education sector and the immersion education sector, as opposed to Gaeltacht, because I think the Irish medium immersion sector is very relevant to your context here, especially in the Bunskull situation. So I do want to draw your attention to 2015, the policy proposals for educational provision in the Gaeltacht areas, and we'll be revisiting this later on during the talk. But our government saw that there was a real need to promote and to support the education system in the Gaeltacht, and to promote the use of Irish outside of the Gaeltacht, and for those native speakers of Irish, that they get the supports that they need and deserve to move forward with their linguistic proficiencies. So those proposals, again, 2015, the policy was published in 2017. Again, a range of initiatives, multiple initiatives coming at the Irish language from different perspectives, with the whole overall theme of developing, sustaining development, maintaining development, invigorating innovation as we move forward to promote our culture and language and identity. And 2016, the Education Act, again, Irish in English medium schools very much promoted here through content and language integration, an approach whereby a subject area is used to teach the second language, that second language being Irish. So in an English medium school, for example, maths or history or geography, it's recommended that one of those subject areas where there's a high density of language, because if you pick PE, for example, you can communicate without opening your mouth. If you pick art, for example, you can communicate without opening your mouth. All you need are the receptive skills of listening and maybe reading. But in something like maths and science, you have to produce language to communicate and interact and learn. So that's why those high density subject areas of language, of that language bank, are chosen to drive forward CLIL initiatives, content and language integrated learning. And there are also some really inventive proposals for Irish medium and for Gaeltacht education, which I'll get into in just a second as well. So those three are very important for us as we move forward in the education system in particular. So, anish befrálam agus hascom gweil esht, tá sé cosúla ceist. Esht, is it? Esht? Yeah, so má bhí éon esht a gcéine faoi láthair. Nó tráchtaracht, beidir gúil fig ag féchant ar seo agus rá tráchtaracht. Yeah. Nó beidir gúil molla, suggestion an sin, molla a gcéine. Nó beidir gúil soléirú, beidir gúil tú cailte, catá ar siúl, what's happening? Will you say that again? So, ein ceist a gcéine ag a buinte seo. Or do you want me to move on swiftly before we get flooded? Are we all okay to move on? Ceist? Yeah, perfect. So just, I suppose, the models of education we have in Ireland. Bilingual education. First, we have English medium education, obviously. And we have Irish medium education, but Irish medium education is split into two distinct models. And even within these two distinct models, we have various models. So no school is like any other school. School is determined by context, by the socio-linguistic context, by the staff who are competent in driving teaching and learning in the school, by the staff and the leader who is innovative and inventive in promoting the use of Irish in school and outside of school, by the professional development and the training that's made available, specialised to these teachers to carry out their job in an effective and professional manner. All of these things shape what we do and what is learned and how it's learned in schools. So no two schools are the same, but we do have some distinct models. You can see here the Gaeltacht school, old buildings, composite classes, a traditional type building in Ireland, this Gaeltacht school, again located in the Gaeltacht area, a fragile, where the language is in a fragile state. You have many language learners. Irish is a second language in these schools. You have many native speakers in these classes also. You have composite classes. You may have children in your class with additional needs. You may have children in your class who speak neither Irish nor English. So be a teacher, put yourself in that teacher's shoes. You have been trained to teach content. You are a qualified teacher. We did not have any program in Ireland to teach a teacher how to teach content through a second language to a bunch of multilingual children with additional needs in a composite class. So do you think that's an easy task? Do you want to switch roles? So that's one task there, and quite a handful for any teacher. And a competent teacher. And the other type of building there, you see the new building, the really technology is a cutting edge technology, top of the range facilities, single classes mainly in these schools, Gael Scoileanna, Irish medium schools outside of the Gaeltacht areas. So this is where I come from personally. I got a job as a head teacher in one of these schools. It didn't look like that back then. You have to work a long time before you get one of those. But I started in Irish medium school, and a small group of us, 4 teachers. It started with 4 teachers, and that school started in '94. Now there's a group of 30. I think 29, 30 teachers, and it has a building like that. And it's only the last 3 years that building came on board. So you can see the journey and the experience and the momentum it takes to get that far. But Irish medium outside of the Gaeltacht is a very popular choice for parents for a variety of reasons. Not just the benefits of bilingualism, but other benefits also that are now coming through research. So I think research is really needed to sell the benefits of bilingualism and to dismiss the concerns that any potential parent would have about sending their child to an immersion context. And I'll talk more in detail about these in just a second. You can see there the volume. So we are still here, loud and clear, but English medium schools As you can see there, we've the majority of English medium schools, heritage language or indigenous language schools, I refer to these as the Gaelic schools, and we have Irish medium in the light blue. So we have 8% of schools are Irish medium schools, 8% of the total numbers. You can see the total numbers there. Just give you a second to take in the numbers, and there'll be a quiz at the end. So you can see the Gaeltacht, our indigenous language schools, 126 at elementary, 22 at post-primary. And again, this is an area that is very complex, the post-primary level. Again, with the Gael Coloshdí, they're called. Gael Scoileanna is an elementary school at the primary level. A Gael Scoil, like the Bunt Scoil. And a Gael Coloshdá, Gael Coloshdí is the plural, at the post-primary level. So we have 144 at primary and 43 at post-primary. And I'll talk a little bit about the complications at post-primary perhaps as well as we move forward. But first of all, just to go into a little bit more detail about the Gaeltacht, and I'll focus more on Irish medium outside of the Gaeltacht, because I think that's the more relevant context to you, and especially when after being in the Bunt Scoil today and spending the day with the teachers there, I feel that it's very relevant. So obviously the focus and the aim for these heritage language or indigenous language schools in the Gaeltacht it's ABC. Cultural competence. Well, I should start with the A really, shouldn't I? but I don't like doing things in order, so I'll start in the middle. So I'll start from the back actually. So cultural competence. A, any guesses? Why do people go to school anyway? Academic ability, absolutely. And B, that's the easiest. What happens when somebody goes to a Gaelic school? Bilingual and? Another one? Starting with B? When you read in two languages? Write in two languages? Biliterate. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So again, the ABC there, but the dual literacy or biliteracy, bilingualism and cultural identity. And in the Gaelic schools, culture is the richness of that learning, and to ingrain and embed culture and to integrate culture in everything we do, that again it needs professional development for teachers. It's an area that we're working on in Ireland, and to instill that desire for the Gaelic child to use Irish on their own without any push from a teacher or an adult, to instill that desire and to create that opportunity to use the language outside of the school. That's where the complication is at times. So even within the Gaeltacht setting, you have a research study going back to 2007 categorised the Gaeltacht schools into 3 different subsets as such: category A, B and C. And as you can hear, this is the number of schools in the Gaeltacht, the graph there, excuse me, and you can see the complications with the daily speakers of Irish. So in category A, we have 67% and over speak Irish. So you have learners of Irish language in those schools, but you have 67% probably mother tongue or native tongue speakers in those schools also. Then in category B, you have between 44 and 66%. Again, think of the dynamic of the classroom, the dynamic of the playground. What is the language of the playground? What is the work plan of the teachers and the staff? If you have a linguistic makeup of that colour in your school. And this school here, which is the more problematic one, 44% of children come from native speaker or mother tongue speakers of Irish. So again, that throws up some significant questions with regards to planning, with regards to implementation, with regards to review, with regards to moving forward, and with regards to supporting the native speaker with their linguistic needs and deficiencies, but also supporting language learners and their journey forward as they learn through Irish, as they learn academic material. So in the Gaeltacht, obviously, what have we to celebrate? We've quite a lot to celebrate. Number one, obviously, the L2, the second language, for the learners of Irish, they achieve a very high proficiency. And I'm talking about the children who are learners of Irish in Gaeltacht schools, not the mother tongue speakers or native speakers. So they have a very high proficiency in Irish, and you wouldn't be surprised. They learn through Irish every day. They communicate. The language of learning, the language of communication, the language of socialisation is Irish. Why wouldn't proficiency levels be sky high? So that's something to celebrate. Additive bilingualism for learners of Irish also. And we have this is all national research. This is all Irish research findings. And it's such a pleasure to be at this stage now that we can back up these assumptions, our ideas, our experiences that effective teachers had for years. But again, when there's that research base there, it strengthens what we have to say. So by additive bilingualism for learners of Irish, this means that when a learner of Irish comes to a Gaelic school, they leave that school with a very high proficiency in English and in Irish. So learning through a second language, or learning Irish as a second language, does not in any way impact negatively on their English skills or English proficiency. So this is something really to celebrate here. The other one, academic achievement. So again, for the learners of Irish here in the Gaelic schools, they achieve on par or above their peers who are in English medium education. But however, even though we have a lot to celebrate and the benefits of being bilingual, the cognitive bilinguals have their ability to be flexible and thinkers, the cognitive skills associated with that, the interpersonal skills, the skills of communication, obviously the other opportunities for employment. When you are bilingual from a very young age, you can learn another language quite swiftly, so they say. And then obviously the many other advantages as well of the academic and the linguistic advantages. So not to mention culture. When you are bilingual, you have a real understanding of culture and other languages, and you're much more open to the diversities of culture and diversities of language. And being bilingual, and even this morning in Greens, you're there. Well, I shouldn't point you out really, but I just did on camera. But somebody said that, it was only when they started learning Manx that they really realized and understood and had to go and search out the grammar rules of their own native tongue. So that metalinguistic awareness, that metalinguistic knowledge, being bilingual from a very young age opens up that exposure, opens up those opportunities and those doors for you. So you become much clued in to how languages work and how they're used and the nuances in language use. So you don't even, as a young child learning a language, that understanding and that knowledge comes naturally to you. So you don't have to think about it. But as adult learners, when we come to learn another language, we obviously bring that knowledge with us, and we're more aware of our mother tongue and how we use it to help our learning journey as well. But unfortunately, we have a lot, sorry. So we have a lot as well that we need to develop here. The decline in Irish language competence and use for native speakers in Gaelic schools. A child who comes into kindergarten, junior infants, who is a mother who has perhaps both parents who are native speakers of Irish at home, comes in fluent, accurate, very rich reservoir of Irish, leaves the school with a higher proficiency in English than in Irish, a concept known as subtractive bilingualism. So learning through Irish in a Gaelic school, in a composite class where there are learners of Irish also, we have research which shows that the concept of subtractive bilingualism is alive for native speakers of Irish.
Does that depend on the category of school you were talking about in the previous slide?
It was across the board. Across the board. So Petter Valley et al. 2014, that was a stark finding. So that was one of the really stark findings and the impetus to encourage and motivate our department to move forward swiftly to do something about this. And it's creating those supports for teachers especially, because they are in that composite class, but they have been trained, or they have had a teacher education to teach content, not teach content in such a complex context, where there are learners, where there are native speakers, where there's very technical vocabulary and language functions for particular content and discipline areas, where you have a range of linguistic needs and backgrounds and expectations and desires, where you have a range of parental needs and motivations also. And then when you have to do that in a whole school approach, it's quite a lot of work, and they need support and professional development in that area.
What does that actually mean when you say decline in language? Does that mean that the children kind of balance out at some particular common denominator level, or?
No, a decline in Irish language competence and use. So what I mean is the child who comes in as a native speaker to that Gaeltacht school.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So children who do not speak Irish learn Irish, and then obviously because they're learning slower than the others sort of try to go down to their level to understand, or is that what happens?
The learner definitely has an impact on the native speaker in interaction, without a doubt. But the learner, both languages are developed simultaneously, and they do not have a negative impact on each other. But from the research, the native speaker, being exposed to such a context that they do not develop. So the English exceeds their development in English exceeds their development of Irish on leaving the school. So that is a stark finding which has pushed us to look at innovative ways to make sure that we support the teachers and the learners, especially in this particular context. The other one is the diverse variation and diversity. As you saw from the previous slide, even in the Gaeltacht, there are such a diverse range of schools. And composite classes, you may have kindergarten to second grade in one class. The next year, because of numbers or resources, it might be kindergarten to first. It depends. The transient nature of teachers in this complex role, it's quite complex. But without the supports, without recognition that we need specialised support, specialised professional development, additional resources, it's very complex. And this is, again, what the government has taken on board and what our Department of Education are working towards. Subtractive bilingualism for native speakers, we already talked about that, and decline in teaching true Irish. So some teachers are so bamboozled by parental needs, parental demands. Some parents come to the school and say, it so happens because of the address of the school, maybe a particular cohort of children are Irish language learners, but because of the address of the school, it's recognised as a Gaeltacht school. But some parents may not have a specific interest in Irish, it's just the local school. Some parents may say, look, why do you have to do this to our children? So teachers struggle to answer all the demands and the teaching and learning needs of the particular cohort of children they're dealing with, and some schools revolt to teaching through English because of a variety of reasons: parental demands, parental expectations, cognitive, academic, discipline areas with really complex concepts. Look, you can do the art in Irish, but when it comes to maths and science, make sure it's done in English, because they have to know that. So there's that kind of level of understanding and that level of expectation out there as well. So again, this is what has pushed our government to make sure that the supports are in place to enable all teachers to be language and content teachers and to meet the needs of all their learners in the Gaeltacht school. So that's the Gaeltacht school as an entity. Quite complex, quite a lot of work to be done, especially when it comes to the native speakers of Irish, and quite a lot of support needed for the teacher who works really hard and diligently in that very complex role and that situation. But when it comes to the immersion schools outside of the Gaeltacht area, the language immersion here, or the enrichment model, again, it's the ABC. What did we say ABC was again? We'll start with the A. We'll say, and cultural competence. Cultural identity, cultural competence, but it's more maintaining the language outside of the school system. So it's obviously very strong in the Gaeltacht to maintain Irish in the community, in the shop, in the post office, activities outside of the school. But here it's making sure that the children and the learners have a connection with the language outside of the school, because we have seen that when children go to an Irish medium school, they're fluent communicators, but they have the language of the school. So have they the register of language needed to fight with each other, to use bad language? Whose responsibility is it to teach them that language? Is it the teachers? So I'm not going to answer that. So you can see here that we have, it's not, by the way. I know the Bunskull teachers are here. So you can see here the Gaelscoil in 1972. I know the print is very small here. 1972, the red is post-primary, the blue is primary. So you can have, this is Irish medium immersion outside of the Gaeltacht. So you go to any big town or any city. In cities, we have multiple Irish medium schools at primary and post-primary level. But you go to any big town in Ireland and we have an immersion campus or school, at least at elementary level. So now, 2016 are our latest figures. We have 143 at primary and at post-primary 42. And what is different about us is where we are different from the international picture is our immersion schools are units of their own. They're from junior infants up to 6th class, as opposed to some immersion schools which are located in English medium schools. We do not have streams as such. We are one unit where children are immersed in that language all day long, very similar to the Bunskal, and we share that unique feature with yourselves. The other unique feature we have in Ireland, and again we share it with yourselves, is from first class onwards, 15% of the time of the school day is devoted to English language learning and teaching. So that is very, very different in the international picture. Because in immersion, to define immersion, at least 50% of the curriculum is taught through the target language or the immersion language. But in Ireland, and indeed here, we are very different on the international stage, as 15% of time is devoted even to English from first grade on. So it's an early total immersion model where kindergarten children are completely immersed in the language from the day they enter the school, and in first grade they're introduced to English language learning and teaching. And the emphasis is on the transfer of skills from Irish, in our case, to English. So the growth, again, you can see here, the research is getting out, more knowledge is getting out about the immersion model, the benefits of being bilingual from a very young age, about the academic benefits as well when it comes to post-primary. There are waiting lists for our post-primary school, and of the top schools, and it's not that we have a league table system, but it's going that direction. Year in, year out, it's the Irish medium schools are at the top. So there are waiting lists for post-primary Irish medium schools, a variety of reasons why parents want their children to attend them, but oftentimes it's because of the academic outcomes. Learning through a second language, an appreciation of culture and identity, and all the other benefits that I talked about earlier. So when it comes to this particular context, what exactly have we to celebrate? And it's quite different. L2 proficiency, obviously, if you know a child who comes into the school without the Irish language, if they're immersed in that language for 2 years, if they learn through that language and they are taught that language for a considerable amount of time, obviously their proficiency in Irish will far surpass their peers in English medium education. That's kind of obvious. But we have the research, and many research findings point to that. Again, additive bilingualism, children who learn Irish as immersion learners and who do not have Irish when they come to school, it has been found that learning through Irish and learning Irish as a second language in this context has no negative impact whatsoever on their other languages, especially on their mother tongue, which happens to be either English or Polish. Polish is our second most spoken language in Ireland at the moment, and we have a huge Polish community. So additive bilingualism is alive and well in immersion. And I'm glad to report that the concept of subtractive bilingualism, where one language has a negative impact on the other, does not exist in the Irish medium immersion schools. So I think this is something that it's a take-home message to look at your own Bunskal, because I think it resembles the Irish medium school more than it resembles the Gaeltacht school. So this is a significant finding for us, and a finding to celebrate, that the children leaving Irish medium immersion leave with a capacity and a proficiency in both Irish and English, or not necessarily English, but in their mother tongue. So learning Irish and learning through Irish does not impact in any negative way on their mother tongue. Majority of the time that is English. Some other times it doesn't have to be English. We now have a multilingual, multicultural society in Ireland. Academic achievement, again, we have many reports that point out, especially when it comes to maths and science and English, that children surpass their peers in English medium education in standardised tests administered in English a lot of the time. However, we do have to be real about things as well. It's not all rosy in the garden. There is scope for development always. So the not so great, the linguistic deficiencies, children are, when they come to the immersion model, they're completely immersed for the first 2 years. They learn through drama, through play, repetitive, the teacher is the model. Again, the interaction, you're not just talking with the language, you're talking with everything you possibly can garnish and harvest to get meaning in the message and the story out there. But there are positives. Children are highly communicative. They have no problem in conveying meaning, getting their message across in that second language. They are extremely confident. I'm sure you'll all agree. Being bilingual from a young age brings that confidence and that means of self-belief. They also haven't any issue in achieving or conveying meaning or putting a message out there. But there are areas that we need to look at and we need to develop. The first one there is grammatical accuracy and complexity. Children in immersion use their mother tongue as the structure to hang their new language on, to make meaning of this language learning journey. So they use their mother tongue and they often borrow structures from their mother tongue to make sense of their growing knowledge of the immersion language. But however, over time, that's fine when the child is learning the language and when there's interlanguage, when they're using both languages to come to terms with the new language, that's fine. But there comes to a stage when a child is completely communicative and they're still using these structures which are grammatically incorrect. So there comes to a time around grade 2 when we have to do something about that and we have to have an innovation, a pedagogical innovation in our schools to surpass that plateau when it comes to language development. Lexical specificity, again, the discourse of the classroom. The academic technical language of the classroom. You know, are they exposed to all the different registers, the different domains, the different contexts? We can only do so much in the classroom. We can only do so much in the school. But can they mock each other in the playground? Can they fight? Can they talk about politics? Can they, have they the linguistic proficiency and capacity? And have they been exposed to that? Have they been provided with the input and the practice? And have they acquired and learnt that language to be capable and proficient speakers of the language? So again, their lexical specificity, their use of vocabulary is particularly limited to their experiences of the school and the classroom. So how do we develop their store of language so that they can use it socially, communicatively, for different occasions and experiences which are not really connected to education and school? So socio-linguistic appropriateness, we will never be as good as the native speaker. We will never have the turn of phrase that a native speaker would normally have. The richness of the language, the pronunciation of the language, we can always strive to get there, but we will never get there. And many, many studies show that. So we have to be realistic about our expectations. We're never going to be native speakers in this context, but we'll be highly proficient speakers of the language and highly communicative speakers of the language, but there's definitely room for growth. So these are our areas that we're very much aware of in Ireland, in Irish medium immersion, and we're looking especially at teacher professional development and teacher education around these areas in particular, teaching content through a second language. How do I infuse and how do I integrate a specific focus on grammar, vocabulary and other linguistic functions, and the rich language? How do I infuse that into my pedagogy as I teach in these complex situations? So it's good to be aware of that as we move forward. So we have many myths and many realities. We love the drama, but one myth, and we've kind of dispelled it, there are a few benefits that come with Irish medium education. So we know for now that there are quite a few benefits. So immersion students achieve an L2 proficiency, then a much higher L2 proficiency than do non-immersion students studying the L2. We said that earlier. Academic achievement is the other one. So research and language immersion education has heralded numerous benefits. Again, we're talking about self-belief, self-confidence, communicative skills, opportunities for employment, awareness of other languages and cultures, openness to diversity, and the list goes on. Another myth, learning through a second language impacts negatively on your child's first language. So again, think of Irish medium immersion. We're not talking about the Gaeltacht situation here, because we found that learning Irish as in an Irish medium school, when Irish is your mother tongue, in a complex linguistic, socio-linguistic context, as is in Gaelic schools, that this has a negative impact on your proficiency of Irish, and you leave with a higher proficiency level in English than Irish. So that is negative. That negative effect exists in Gaelic schools. But when it comes to immersion, no such concept is found after numerous research initiatives have taken place. So after a sustained period, and there is a lag, and this is where parents got concerned, and oftentimes teachers are bamboozled with the amount of questions and concerns parents have. Oh, Tommy down the road is going to an English medium school. He has 3 readers read in English. He knows all his words, his sight words. He's onto the spellings. He's onto that's a different model. It's a different approach. They're learning through mother tongue. But here, after a sustained period of time, early total immersion students, L1 achievement is on par with non-immersion students and is often actually higher. So there is a delay, a learning delay. You know, they're immersed in the language. So when it comes to reading, when it comes to spelling, there is a delay for sure. So first grade, second grade, but when it comes to third grade, that acceleration snaps in, and when they leave the primary school, they are on par or they exceed when it comes to language and literacy in English and in Irish. So that's the research we have there again from Irish. So second language learning does not negatively affect the first language. Again, specifically Irish medium immersion, not the Gaeltacht. Irish medium education is not appropriate for students with special educational needs. Have we ever heard that before? So again, it's something that we have been. It's a tense one. It's a sensitive one. It's a one that's full of emotion. And again, the last few years in particular, it has stimulated a lot of research in the Irish context because we had huge misunderstandings, and there was definitely not joined up thinking about the whole role of immersion and the relationship with learners in the immersion context who happen to have additional needs. Learning through a second language or learning content through a second language. So we have much taide dúchasach, and just recently a lot of research has come to come on board. Again, educational programs, socio-economic are schools recognised as disadvantaged, are an array of special educational needs. Some research have targeted specific needs when it comes to educational additional needs, and all the research points out that a child with a learning difficulty across the spectrum on that spectrum of learning needs will succeed in an Irish medium school just as well as an English medium school, if not better. So moving the child to an English medium school is not the solution. That learning additional need will not disappear overnight. So there has been a lot of concern, a lot of misunderstandings over that, but we are glad to report that we have the research and the evidence now that backs up our assumptions and presumptions and experiences as immersion teachers over the last while. And it's something that we're really happy with because it was a huge concern and a controversial concern for a lot of us, especially when it comes to psychological assessments, when it comes to resourcing in immersion schools, and when it comes to that fear of immersion. And there is a delay when it comes to language and literacy, as you saw there in the immersion school. Children, there's a slower rate of when it comes to reading, when it comes to spelling. Parents do get concerned. So to alleviate those concerns, we need again that research base, that evidence base that we now have. So the reality, research and experience demonstrate that very few students cannot benefit from learning in an immersion program. So we have again that research to build it up. So we're nearly there. Nach mór ann, so I get buinte seo, will tráchtrucht, an observation, an will mulla, ein rud le rá, a mé géistecht, right? Nu will soléirú, beidir gúil sibh cailte, beidir gúil sibh cailte last. Nu will ein ceist, éist, ceist. Question. So will I, Siobhan queuing, very quiet. Must be the heat. Turn up the heat. Absolutely. The range of studies here, Ní Clochsaigh Ó Dír and Síl, they specifically looked at DEIS schools, delivering equal opportunity to Irish schools. This group of schools are recognised as disadvantaged schools, so there are various supports in place for them. And the big concern was, they need support with their mother tongue, not to mind immersion. So where are we going here? Why are we having these immersion schools in these settings? So that specific research report looks at those specific needs. Ícruthúir looks at literacy and dual literacy and dyslexia and dyscalculia, like a range of additional needs there. Ní Bhfuil Ciarán looked at autism and looked at a child with autism in an Irish medium context. And again, the findings are astoundingly positive, that a child with autism succeeds just as well in Irish medium. And Nick Andrew, O'Dear and Travers, again, they're looking at an array of unique and it's the whole thing about learning, being bilingual from a young age. Again, the benefits of being bilingual, the cognitive flexibility, the creative thinking, all those benefits, that metalinguistic awareness, like being bilingual, that understanding of how languages work, that keenness of wanting to learn a third language, wanting to figure out patterns, wanting to be analytical, all of those skills come naturally to a bilingual child. So obviously they shape that journey and that learning journey for that type of learner, even in very challenging contexts, like a disadvantaged context. So it's the benefits and the magic of being bilingual from a young age, really. So I'm just going to give you a taster really here of where we are with regards to moving forward, because I know we all want to move forward. We do want to get out of here tonight. So moving forward, again, the Gaeltacht, it throws up some significant questions for us in Ireland. The amount of native Irish speakers who speak Irish, again, is astounding. And we need to build that. We need to develop the use of Irish in the education system and outside. So the policy on Gaeltacht education was one particular document that has really planned and mapped out the journey for over the next period of years to especially support the education system in the Gaeltacht, but also promote the use of Irish and culture and tradition outside of the education system. We can't blame it on the school all the time. But the community has to take responsibility in a collective and integrated and holistic and meaningful manner, and with a focus and purpose. So that's one. And each, in the schools, one particular document arising out of the policy on Gaeltacht education there was a list of language criteria, language-based criteria, which every school has to identify. In the Gaeltacht now, all schools were normally and naturally identified as being Gaeltacht schools. But now, to be recognised as a Gaeltacht school, each Gaeltacht school has to analyse the practice of what's going on, the demands, the needs, the competencies of the learners and the staff, and they have to devise an action plan based on these specific criteria mapped out to be a Gaeltacht school, to define a Gaeltacht school, because how do you define a Gaeltacht school? There's such diverse contexts out there. But these basic core criteria, a Gaeltacht school now has to devise an action plan based on one of these and implement that plan over time. The Department of Education and Skills monitor how that plan is being implemented, and they review and they build on it again. The whole school self-evaluation process to plan, to target an area for development based on these criteria, to plan and map the journey forward, to monitor that plan as we go forward, and then to review the development with regards to results and standards, not just of learning and teaching, but also of promoting the use of Irish outside of the school. And then the whole cycle starts again. We go to a new and brighter and higher level of planning and implementation again. So the other documents here that I'd like to mention is my colleague and I, we conducted some research, commissioned research on what exactly are the traits of an effective immersion school. There are so many, the school is defined by context, but what are the essential core traits of an effective immersion school? So we did a full-scale piece of research with 120 teachers from all different contexts, and we came up with 10 specific traits for an immersion school. and best practices within, for example, the next slide kind of shows you the traits or that, but what are the best practices associated with those traits? And should schools look at those practices and I suppose mirror some of those practices? How can they develop to reach their full potential? So those two documents there, they have been adapted from our piece of research, and we had input into these as well for the Gaeltacht schools. So they have taken our research and best practices arising out of our research, and they have adapted them for Gaeltacht education. So now Gaeltacht schools, as you can see, they're indicators of good practice. So these 10 traits that we have selected because of the research base, again, the Department of Skills, and we contributed also, but they have taken these in their official documents now that Gaeltacht schools use as tools for development and evaluation. So the Gaeltacht, there are many areas for development. Structure of educational provision, obviously the Gaeltacht school and reinvigorating the Gaeltacht school, providing the supports. The quality of teaching through Irish. Professional development is key there. So there are a range of initiatives for professional development for teachers in Gaeltacht schools, particularly in composite classes, dealing with a variety of linguistic needs and backgrounds, parental demands and motivations, limited resources, capacity of school leaders and management. School leaders in these Gaeltacht schools are full-time teachers of a composite class with all those complex learning demands and needs. So where does that school leader get the time to breed, get the time to have a life, get the time to reflect, get the time to stay healthy? So it's quite a challenging job for that school leader. So that's being recognised, and again, a series of supports being put in place for that particular school leader. Early years provision, again, making sure that there's kindergarten provision for Irish medium children, in Irish medium for children, as a feeding ground for the immersion and for the Gaeltacht context, and also parents as partners. How can parents be informed and involved and make informed decisions about what's best for their children? And again, heralding the benefits of bilingualism is one thing, but also ensuring that parents are fully informed about the benefits when it comes to additional educational needs and immersion, about English and Irish and how children acquire this dual literacy or bilingualism, how long it takes, what process, what happens, how is it done, how is it assessed. So there's a real need to inform and involve parents from the outset as well. So this policy in Gaeltacht education is kind of, I suppose, embraces all these in a really focused way. But where my interest lies is Moon Torme. You might have seen by my body behaviour, my body language of that. I am a teacher after all. So the quality of teaching through Irish, that is what I'm really interested in. So how do we define quality? So Aoife Hay and myself, we went in search of quality. And again, this is our research report. What exactly, how do teachers define quality in Irish medium education? So we distilled it down into, after reviewing the international research on quality immersion models, and after communicating and harvesting data from 120 teachers, a national study, these were the 10 traits that we devised from it. So to be an effective immersion school, obviously a definition of immersion school, what is it? Is there a shared definition? Even among the staff, have they a focused vision? What is their vision? Are some teachers happy that children are taught through Irish in the classroom, that they use Irish in the classroom the minute they go to lunch, the minute they're in the yard, hello, I'm on my break? Is there joined up thinking here? What's going on? So the program structure, integration and planning, what type of planning? What level of planning? What are the expectations of the teachers? What are the demands of the teachers? What are the challenges here? Responsibility, leadership and evaluation. Again, how do the leaders manage in these complex contexts? And what supports map out their journey? Curriculum. Again, the opportunities and the challenges when it comes to curriculum. We follow the very same curriculum as English medium schools. So there's not additional support as such, except for the Irish language. Pedagogy, how do I integrate content and language in a time-effective way as a teacher in a composite class with a diverse group of learners? Specific tailored professional development. Again, teachers in immersion need specific immersion professional development. Going to professional development which is tailored to meet the needs of English medium teachers is no use to us. We need tailored and focused pedagogical approaches and interventions and support which meet our needs, which are specific and unique, and that needs to be recognised. The systematic teaching of L1, L2, again, teaching English and teaching Irish as languages are essential. Teaching Irish through content, okay, but there needs to be time to teach Irish as Irish language also, to make sure that children in immersion are not just fluent and communicative, but they're also accurate users and producers of language. Community links, obviously, to embrace Irish outside of the school, maximising language use and socialisation, and government support and resources. So they were the 10 key tenets or 10 key traits that teachers in Ireland recognised as being the key traits are the buncloch, the base rock on which to build an effective immersion model. And so out of all these traits, we devised key best practices as articulated by the teachers and as mirrored in the international research. So what exactly are we talking about when it comes to best practice in pedagogy? How exactly do I integrate content and language across the curriculum? How do I draw children's attention not just to how to use the language, but also how to use the language accurately and in a holistic manner? So what are best practices? So Aoife and I composed lists or checklists of best practices that can be used at schools now as a stimulus for maybe conversation, as a tool for review, as a planning tool, as an aid, as a self-reflective check, as an independent teacher, but are as an anchor, you know, to start planning. So when it comes to teacher education, and I'm finishing here, you'll be glad to know, in 2018, as part of the policy for Gaeltacht education, the government funded a Masters in Irish Medium Education. I coordinate that Masters. It's in where I work, Mary Immaculate College, for a cohort of teachers who are qualified teachers, but who are qualified with the generic qualification of teaching content. So this particular 2-year blended learning programme is really geared at the needs and the specific needs and demands of teachers in the Irish medium sector. Again, it's a postgraduate 2-year blended learning programme, and it's cross-sector. Again, that sharing of minds, that disconnection that sometimes exists between the sectors from kindergarten to primary to post-primary to involving the parents on that journey, that disconnect really is alive and well, and we need to build those bridges between the sectors. So having that cross-sectoral community of learners is really rich in the makeup of this particular programme. And I must say it's quite an honour to work with such an invigorating and such an enthusiastic group of learners. The other the huge step forward is from next September, we will have, for the first time ever in Ireland, we will have initial teacher education, a B.Ed, a Bachelor of Education degree for teachers who perhaps leave primary school or maybe are not primary school, we're not that good, but post-primary school, or who come back as maybe mature learners to university, and there will be a 4-year B.Ed programme totally geared at the needs and demands of being an immersion teacher, so to work in the Gaeltacht or to work in Irish medium. So now you can, if you have decided at the ripe age of 16, 17 that you want to be a teacher who will work in an immersion or a Gaeltacht school, you will have the opportunity of applying for such a B.Ed degree. But this B.Ed degree is not just about Irish, it's about teaching content through a second language. So any school would be really lucky to get a graduate from this course because of that multilingual and multicultural nature of our schools makeup, English medium and Irish medium these days, and that understanding of how languages work in the whole learning journey. Just before I came over here, I was saying to Adrian, we had for the master's programme, I don't know if you're aware of the Common European Framework for Languages. It's a specialised, standardised European language test across all the skills in language. And to come on this course, the master's course, a candidate had to have a B2 in Irish. So the government pays for the programme, €7,000 per year. But you do have to achieve a B2 to come on the course. You have to be a qualified teacher, 3 years experience. There are a few other entry criteria. But on leaving the course, you have to achieve a C1, which is a significant leap forward. So just before coming over here, we had interviews for a position for a language specialist. So the resourcing those programs with somebody with high proficiency in the language is essential, so that we can learn together and move forward together. But the resourcing, again, that's an issue when it comes to the delivery of these programs and the provision of these programs, getting the people with a specific skill set who happen to have a very high proficiency in Irish. Again, that's the struggle of the day, I think, and that's something we're continually battling with as we move forward. So, Massam Gershina made a toleragum, but just time for a reflection, if you have that space left. So those take-home moments, or what exactly have you gleaned from here? What really rings a bell, or what alarms you, or what makes you think again, or have you seen something in a different light? Agus ní léon rud eile le rágam ach gur míle maith, and the biggest thing, and I'm so delighted well, I wish I could say this, but I can't, so I'm just going to put it on the slide. Cogordchas. Mole a sole, is it? Mole a sole? Yeah. So, Gurmaiv, for míle maith.